Good afternoon. This meeting may involve the remote participation by members, either by telephone or other electronic means, due to the local health emergency, novel coronavirus pandemic, pursuant to the provisions of MinStat sections 13D.021. Welcome everyone to the I&E subcommittee. We've got a pretty full agenda today. There will be 6 substantive items, so we'll keep that in mind in our questioning and hopefully in the presentations as well. We'll be efficient with the time and we'll get through the full agenda as written. We don't need to do roll call, or do we want to do formal adoption of the agenda, Chris? All right.
No, I think we can just jump in.
Then let's do that in the sake of time. We're going to start with Kelsey, Aaron, and Jason regarding the Hiawatha Lake presentation. So who's ever going to take off?
That would be me.
Please. All right, terrific.
I see 20 minutes. Let me share my screen here. Hold on. Never as fast as I'd hope. Sorry about this. There we go. So everyone can see my screen, I assume. And so introducing ourselves, I'm Jason Stabell with Hennepin County. With me here today, Kelsey from the city. Stephanie is a consulting, helping us with outreach. Aaron Tagg with MnDOT. And Lisa from MnDOT. So I'll do most of the presentation, and we'll see if you have questions. I might defer to all these different agency people. So what this is a high lake intersection.
Jason, may I just ask you to pause for a second? Are people seeing, I'm seeing Jason's initials and not share a screen of any tiles or anything. Can anyone else see the tiles, or it's just me?
I can see the presentation.
Okay, well, let me.
I can see it too.
All right, terrific. Sorry to interrupt you, Jason. I'll work on this end while you're doing that. Oh, now I can see it. Okay. Terrific.
So this project's at Hiawatha Lake, Lake Street in Hiawatha in Minneapolis. So we're focused on this interchange here between Lake Street, which is a county road, and Hiawatha, which is Highway 55, a MnDOT road. So let me go. The project partners I've kind of mentioned: Hennepin County, MnDOT, Minneapolis, and Metro Transit. So our goals is to reflect the public's priorities for the High Lake intersection, a safe area that supports a connected community, and a climate-friendly transportation. And we'll kind of dig into those a little bit more as we get through the presentation here. So the redesign of this area is building off of some previous studies. Phase 1 happened in 2016, then the phase 2, 27 through 2019, to reimagine the intersection of these two roads. Some context of the High Lake space: it's three different neighborhoods that kind of intersect at this place, and there's a bunch of micro communities within all these neighborhoods. A lot of destinations around this area for people using various transportation modes. So some barriers, some demographics of the 3 neighborhoods. As you can read on the screen there, there's similar sized neighborhoods, a little different household ownerships and people of color throughout those 3 neighborhoods. A little bit more demographics of the area: people of color, non-English speakers, people with a disability, household making less than $35,000, and cost burden renter households. So it's giving a kind of a idea of the area. So kind of mentioned this before, it's a destination for people seeking services across Minneapolis. We have Target, we have South Hennepin County Human Service Center, Hennepin County Healthcare, the YWCA, the High Lake Shopping Center, and just to name a few. So this is a convergent point of a lot of different modes. So a lot of walking and biking, transit, and vehicles. And we're very sensitive of this area's a community of rebuilding and everything that's happened in the last few years. So we're working now in this design space under the bridge. I'll kind of get into that a little bit more here. But that's where the outreach is happening. It started kind of late last year and into this year with the redesign happening in 2024. So this is an aerial view of the interchange area. We've digitally removed the bridges. So you're looking at what it looks like on the road. As you can see, it's what is called a single point interchange, where there's just one signal controlling this interchange. And so there's these big sweeping lefts and higher speed rights that make for efficient vehicle movement, but do not provide a good experience for any other modes. So that's what the currently looks like. And moving forward, we are changing this into a tight diamond design. So a tight diamond is probably more common for everyone to see in Minneapolis, where there's an interchange. It's two ramps on each side of the bridge that come to signals. And with this, we're also narrowing the lanes that are on the ramps, number of lanes, and where we can, widths of ramps, and then changing the dynamic of Lake Street a little bit too. So the yellow space is going to be wide open space. If you were going to measure from edge of road to the abutment of the bridge, this is about 70 feet of just area that is non-roadway area. So our focus for outreach is what should be done with this area. The minimal thing that could be done is just make it concrete and just a concrete pedestrian bike area. But we want to get a sense of where people want to do with this area, and what other possibilities can function in this area. I will point out that there's an existing trail that runs along Hiawatha that goes through Lake Street to the north. And then we're proposing to extend this trail along, would be southbound exit ramp. This connects up to 28th. Right now it's kind of a very tight sidewalk. With this reconfiguration of the interchange, more room for a trail, shared use path type design. Metro Transit is also working in this area where they're going to be putting in the B line along Lake Street. And there's two stops for the B line proposed. The one on the south side is already built, but we'd be building the north one with this project. So the safe, more connected, and climate-friendly design. So I've kind of mentioned this before: increase safety for all forms of transportation, improve connectivity and access for people across neighborhoods, and support climate-friendly transportation. So back to this image again. This kind of, again, overview of what it looks like today, and back to what it will look like in the future with two signals and ramps. Kind of highlighting where the curb lines are now. The yellow are where all the curbs are on the road, and in the future, it's more squared up design to eliminate the confusion. I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Barb, you have a question?
Yeah, my question is for the areas that you described a 70-foot area. I'm assuming that's both of those concrete areas, not just the one on the north side of Lake Street. Is that correct?
This one's, the north one is about 70 feet and the south one's about 50 feet.
Okay.
So
it's a lot of space.
Yes. Yeah. Very
Okay,
much.
that was my question.
Okay.
Thanks.
I had a question just a few slides back, and you don't have to go back to it, but the statistic that there's 40,000 vehicles a day that go through this intersection, does that include vehicles continuing through on Hiawatha, or is that vehicles making turning movements and using Lake Street?
It's all of the above. So it's taking into account the through traffic on top and then the Lake Street traffic.
Okay, it seems like that might be something you could, if you could adjust that. Like, it seems like you're not engineering for the traffic going through on Hiawatha, right?
Correct.
It seems reasonable to have a lower number, so it doesn't seem like this is primarily a space for cars, because most of the cars are just dealt with by the bridge deck.
Yeah, I recently looked. I think Lake Street still has about 20,000 vehicles per day, but I understood.
Yeah.
So to cross this area is a lot of different ped ramps. It's not a straightforward crossing. A lot of skewed different crossings with the proposed design. Lot more direct routes for people on bikes and pedestrians to get through this intersection area.
Well, thank you, Jason. Barb, do you have your?
I'm going to take it down.
Okay. With Barb and Aaron's questions, Aaron, it's nice to see you again, by the way. Does anyone else have a question, comment? And if not, I will ask one. At least right now.
Slides, if I can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, definitely. Forgive
No
my interruption, please.
I put an odd pause in there. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. The area right now is this weird triangle on each side, and as I've kind of talked about, it's going to grow considerably. So we've kind of talked about these priorities. What we're looking at is what are the priorities for the public to have under the bridge there? Government is not always the best partner to maintain and activate a space, but we can provide the space. So we're also looking, who are some logical community partners to make this space even better? And then we have some guidelines that what we can put under a bridge. So we have to weigh that too. An example I always use is we can't really have a flammable liquid or something that could damage the bridge underneath there. So we're in this presentation, we're just trying to give some inspiration of thoughts. And here's an example in Milwaukee of, it's called Brighten the Passage. Some artwork on the bridge piers and kind of making the space a little bit more friendly. This one's local, it's in Hopkins. This is 169. So the bridge is MnDOT's, and the city of Hopkins has an agreement with MnDOT, and the city of Hopkins works with a company, Third Layer Skate Shop, and they have a skate park underneath the bridge. Some other examples are mobility hubs, rideshare lockers, things of that nature. It wouldn't look like what the photo looks like there, but it's just trying to get inspiration out there. So as I'm talking about, we're in that public engagement phase, gathering input, and then we're going on. We'll share those again. Some ideas that we see as themes and seeing where those go later this spring, and then moving forward into the final design approvals in the summer. Kind of talked about this already. And so the website is hennepin.us High Lake. I'm the project manager for the design not design. Public outreach, so the county's leading the public outreach. MnDOT is leading the design and construction, but we're all working closely together. With that, open to other questions.
The first one that I have is, are you looking for a resolution today from this subcommittee? I look at the time, it looks you'll probably not be back. Is that correct?
I think we've talked about with the bike advisory that we'd be back probably in April, maybe May. And
Good.
at that point, we'd have a layout with more detail to provide the engineering aspect to it. So
Okay, terrific. All right, so questions. Barb, did you have a question?
Nope, I'm done.
All right. Julia.
I've got a question and maybe a comment. The first is I'm noticing that we're not having all legs of all intersections. And maybe this is more of a comment as well. And the PAC definitely has a strong preference for that. And we're missing both interior north-south connections on the plan as shown. And I think that is an important way of making the intersections feel less car dominated, like being able to cross as you need to rather than waiting because you don't have the crossings that you need as you're traveling. Or if you see somebody that you know and want to, you can't shout across and be heard. So being able to move towards across is important. I urge you to add in all legs of all intersections as a really important means of communicating pedestrian orientation. And just looking at the Milwaukee sample, that seems really, at least the view that we have in what you shared is really car oriented and the scale and the design. And I don't know if you have other examples that are, the skate park looks great just in terms of something I'd like to walk by, but murals that are at that scale are not for the people walking past them. They're for the drivers going past. And I'd urge you to really consider the speeds that people are moving and how close they are to different pillars or whatever the other elements are, and what the kind of lighting is. It's a really miserable underpass to be under right now. And I don't know if something like that would even really make a difference because of its scale.
Understood. Yeah, we're trying with those examples. We're trying to spur people's minds to think of things, but none of those are even stuff that we're posing. So it's.
I hear that. I know that a lot of times we see that the general perspective that's even given in like designs presented to the city for a building is a very distant perspective rather than what you get when you're walking. So I think that's where we default to across all sorts of planning means. So I didn't mean that as a critique, but hopefully a reminder to really keep in mind how to make things almost a human tiny scale because of how large and unpleasant and monolithic the structure is that you're going past. And successful elements for me are often places that are graffitied because that's done at a human scale. And it has layering over time and things shift, and at the very least you notice different elements and people interact with it differently. So I know that's not necessarily what the city would be aiming for, but for other ways of looking at what gets to the visual interest at 3 miles an hour.
Understood.
Yeah, and maybe I can just jump in with a quick note about the art itself. So there is a public art grant that's been awarded to this project. So there'll be a separate process from the city side to design the art. So we'll share those comments back that we get on the art itself with that team, but there will be some more engagement and work around what that art actually looks like. I think it's important to note the kind of pedestrian scale piece that you shared, Julia. So thanks for that.
Thank you. And if there's I'm curious about getting the other legs of the intersections as well. I did phrase that as a comment more than a question, but if there is feedback on how we can.
You're talking this and this, right?
I'm actually on the phone, so I can't
okay.
see. I looked at the slides and I have them in front of me, but I don't know what you're
Okay,
gesturing
the
to.
interior of the ramps. Then we've,
Correct.
we will, that'll be reflected in the next layout. I think we've talked
Thank
through with MnDOT, and it'll be there.
MnDOT does not have, okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julia. Anyone else? I don't see any hands, but jump in if I'm not seeing you. All right, well, with that, thank you, Jason. We'll see you in a couple of months and have a look more at the specific engineering and go from there.
I just wanted to say there's some open houses coming next Tuesday and March 1st. There's also a virtual tour. If you go to hennepin.us/High Lake, you can get to this virtual tour. And this is kind of all the same stuff I shared with you already. We have sliders so you can kind of see it over each other. And then at the bottom, we do have a rendering, a 3D rendering of what it would look like from a pedestrian slowly walking through the corridor. So when we get more feedback, we'll update that model too at some point. So that's all I have. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next up, Vision Zero Corridors, Amy and Christian, is it? Ooh.
Hi, everyone. Amy's not able to attend tonight, so I'll be presenting to you all. Here we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Christian Zimmerman. I'm an associate transportation planner with the city of Minneapolis. One of the folks that works on the Vision Zero Capital program. So yeah, I just want to provide you all with kind of some information about the capital program in general in relation to Vision Zero, and talk a little bit about our 2022 projects that are coming up for later this year. So a little bit of program overview. So the Vision Zero Capital Program supports the Vision Zero Action Plan. Really what we're looking to do is make cost-effective safety improvements. We're looking to do those systematically and rapidly on our high-injury streets. And our high-injury streets, we reflect a data-driven approach, and that's directly informed by our Vision Zero Action Plan, which was developed back in 2019. So a little bit just of overview of budget and where these improvements are for this program. So we have about a $1.18 million budget in 2022, and then beyond this year, so 2023 and 2024, we have a $500,000 budget per year. Our improvements are on all of our city-owned high-injury streets, and we're looking to make those over the next couple of years. Really looking at 22, 23, and potentially into 2024. So we're looking to make these fairly rapidly. We have 24 high-injury streets identified for improvements. So we're tackling quite a few streets per year to try and, make improvements to all of these fairly quickly. And on this map here, and I'll get into a little bit of detail as we go on, but just at a high level, you can see here that we have our high-injury streets, which some of them are identified in kind of that maroonish purple color. And then we have our solid yellow and blue lines, which are high-injury streets that have received recent safety improvements. The blue lines indicate the Vision Zero Capital Program, which were done in 2021. You'll see that really what we're looking at is just Lindale up here, and we have a couple intersections throughout the city. And then the solid yellow are non-Vision Zero Capital programs that have introduced safety improvements over the last couple of years recently. And then what's highlighted in the kind of the dashed blue and yellow, those reflect our safety improvements that are coming up in the next couple of years. The solid or the dashed blue, those represent Vision Zero. And those are planned for 2022, and then the dashed yellow are non-capital, non-Vision Zero capital programs. So a little bit more information. Really what these improvements are intended to do are to fundamentally change the feel and safety of these corridors. We're looking to make these improvements with our quick build materials, and really what those materials come down to are using our bollards or delineators and paint, our main attributes that we use. And we also do look at the opportunity to upgrade these improvements with curb improvements where possible. Those are very selective, and they don't always occur each year just because of our limited budget and capital that we have for this program. And also, just overall, we're looking to make rapid improvements where when we start to get to those curb improvements, more permanent, those projects take, not only a lot more funding, but a lot more time. So a little bit just about potential treatments that we look at for different intersections. Mainly, what I talked about were these paint and bollards, and you can see there's different ways that we can use these materials in different ways to get different outcomes and safety treatments. Our first one here is delineator bump outs, which I think everyone on this call is fairly familiar with. We use these to visually and physically narrow the roadway, creating those shorter and safer crossing distances, high visibility crosswalk that we have at our signalized intersections, our slow turn wedge. These are essentially, you can kind of think of them as a half bump out, which would be, instead of wrapping the entire radius of a curb in one quadrant, we're really just doing it on one side. Those help to just kind of lead the vehicle and follow that proper turning path. So it's kind of an extension of that curb line. And then our delineator medians, those are, just our bollards out in the middle of the roadway that help to break up the two or more vehicle travel lanes that we have. And we can at times use those to provide some level of protection to pedestrians and or bicyclists that are crossing the roadway. Our hardened center lines, these are still using our bollards. What we use them for are protections for left-hand turns. These really help to slow vehicles as they make that left-hand turn. It forces the vehicle to not cut the corner too early, so it forces them to move out into the intersection a little bit further, and really allows for that good sight lines with pedestrians that may be entering the crosswalk or already in the crosswalk. Our bike conflict zone striping, that's that green paint that you see around at our intersections, and those just help to delineate space for bicyclists at those intersections. Our rapid flashing beacons, a little difficult to see in this photo, but really what those are, the push buttons at different locations, and then signage starts to light up and alerts drivers that a pedestrian is crossing at that location. And then our last piece that we do on our back plates for the signalized intersections, really what it is it's essentially a yellow tape that goes around the edge of the back plate, and that's highly reflective. It just helps to alert that driver's eye to the signals. They work pretty well during the day and at night, and just reflect off of headlights and other lights that are in the area. So this map here, this is showing our Vision Zero capital program, our roadways that we're doing corridors, some of these from 2021, showing our 2022, and then an outlook to 23, 24, and beyond. What you'll see here is orange represents our 2021 locations. We did multiple intersections, and then we did the corridor of Lindale Avenue North with the Vision Zero program. The intersections of Bryant and Dowling up in North Minneapolis, and then 8th in Chicago, 15th in Chicago, 35th in Nicollet, and 37th in Nicollet. Those were intersections that we actually partnered with the University of Minnesota last year. The university was looking to do a study on different crossing features that could be added to the roadway just to find more compliance with pedestrians getting vehicles to stop to allow them to cross. We don't have that data yet from that study, but we are expecting to get that sometime in the spring of this year from the university. For 2022, you'll see that our corridors for this year that we have planned are highlighted in blue, and those corridors also include our 2021 locations. We did have, we had intentions of installing multiple locations in 2021, but we just had some issues getting our hands on materials with the pandemic and supply chain issues. So those have been delayed a little bit just until this spring. That'll go in once the weather permits. Those locations were Dowling Avenue between Penn and I-94, Monroe Street between Broadway and Lowry, 36th Street between Nicollet and Park, and then 42nd Street between Lindale and Cedar. So our corridors that we're planning this year and that will be installed, late spring to early and midsummer, are 31st Street, Nicollet to Cedar, 6th Street, 2nd Avenue to Chicago, 7th Street, 2nd Ave to 11th Avenue, North 2nd Avenue, Washington to 5th Street, Nicollet Avenue, Lake Street to 46th Avenue, East 35th Street, Nicollet Avenue to Hiawatha, Fremont Avenue North, Lowry to 44th Avenue, and lastly, Lindale Avenue and Franklin Avenue. That one is just an intersection. So we have quite a few corridors that we'll be installing for 2022. So that's pretty exciting. I think it's 13 locations throughout the city out of our 24 high injury street corridors that we're looking to improve. A little bit of timeline just overall for this whole program. So the Vision Zero Action Plan identified our high injury streets and network back in 2018. And then the capital program was established in 2020. In early 2022, we're looking to engage with our community and stakeholders for our newest corridors and projects that we have upcoming. And then, like I said, this spring, first thing once the weather breaks, we'll install those previously planned 2021 locations of Dowling, Monroe, 36th and 42nd. And then this summer, we'll do the corridors that we're currently working on now of 2nd Avenue, 6th Street, 7th, Franklin, Lindale, Fremont, Nicollet, 31st and 35th. And then in 2023 and beyond, we'll continue to implement safety improvements on all of our remaining city-owned high injury streets. Some of our next steps, so we'll be continuing to develop out our design concepts and our plans for our corridors. We'll begin engagement with the communities and neighborhoods for all of these corridors and locations. And then we will continue to coordinate with intersecting and overlapping capital projects and partners. And then we'll have that anticipated installation for the spring and summer. And that is all of the information that I have for you at this time. And I will note that we have developed, as part of our engagement tool, I can show it here. We've developed an online kind of a mapping tool that allows anyone to go on and look at these high injury streets that have been identified. You can click onto these and you can leave a comment. And it's just another engagement tool that we have for this year. It's only been up and running for maybe a month or two, and we have quite a bit of good feedback there. And you can access that through the Vision Zero Capital program webpage, and I can put that link into the chat if you all would like. So with that, I'll open it up for comments and questions.
Thank you, Christian. I just have a sort of an introductory question. Could you explain a little bit about the funding of Vision Zero? You mentioned like this year's 1.18, and then it drops about 55 or 60% to 500,000 for the next couple years. Why is that? And just remind me where the program gets its money, and just a little bit of explanation on that.
Yeah, so it's a little murky. It's not super straightforward, but So this funding comes out of the capital budget. And so each year there's a certain amount that's allocated. We also use some bonding efforts that we have for these programs and these projects. And so that funding, as we are moving forward and we have less corridors that we have to do, that funding kind of decreases as there's just less corridors for us to implement. But there's still always, that doesn't mean that our work is, say, over in 2024, because there's always corridors to continue to work on, and there's, ever-changing funding potentials and possibilities that we're consistently going after to acquire more funding for this program. But right now, $500,000 has just been allocated for 2023 and beyond. But there's always a potential that can shift. It's not set in stone, I should say.
And just so I understand, out of that amount, does staff come out, or can you give us an idea of how many FTEs there are in the program that is covered by these amounts annually? Or I'm just trying to get an idea of the current size of the program, because initially it was, one person and $100,000 budget kind of thing. Could you talk to that about staffing levels and full-time equivalents if there's more than one person and that kind of thing?
Sure. And so the team is, so Ethan Foley heads up our Vision Zero program. And then with that, myself, Amy Barnstorff, and Luke Hansen are all housed in transportation planning and programming as associate transportation planners and transportation planners that work on this program as part of the work that we do. We don't bill all of our time to this, but some of our timing does go towards this budget. And then we do have a over in our engineering department, we do have an engineer that has dedicated time to this program. So all in all, that's, 5 of us that work on this.
And Christian, if I could just jump in for a quick second. Christopher, just so you know, like the CIP and all the capital programs is separate from what funds our staffing. That's the budget specifically for the capital piece. So some of that capital piece might be design work that goes towards it. I don't know exactly how much of that happens with Vision Zero, but for the most part, like those positions and staff positions are like general funded in other ways. And this functions kind of similar to like our other programs, like Big 28 is our protected bikeway program, and like it's $1 million a year or something like that. That may have changed, but in any given year we might spend 1.5 million, and then the next year we have 0.5, just kind of depending on the size of projects and things like that. So even when it's that kind of yearly regular amount, it might get moved around a little bit.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised, but that doesn't necessarily mean somebody doesn't have a question. This includes you, Julia, on the phone. Does anybody have a comment or a question?
I've got one. I'm just curious with the comments about the supply chain issues. That's something that I know the PAC has raised periodically as an increasing concern as climate breakdown continues to intensify and impact things like global supply chains. And I'm wondering what you've learned from what's been going on so far and what's being done to be able to make sure that we're able to rapidly shift our streets in the face of supply chain issues, so that the things that are worsening because of transportation emissions are not there. It's just a bad feedback loop if we don't have a plan, and I'm curious how that's all fitting into your thinking and what kind of flexibility and systems you're planning for.
Yeah, really, really great comment, Julia. So this year, what we've done is we've really started working on this much earlier and getting to those points of where we're working with our contractors to have these installed. So we are quite a ways ahead from where we were previously. Some of this work does go out and is performed by city crews, and some of the other work is broken out to contractors. And last year, with the supply chain issues, there was at the point that we were able to get to them, it was just a little too late for them to be able to get their hands on products. So this year we've really shifted to making sure that we're at that point at a lot earlier standpoint in the year. So if they do happen to run into those issues, there's time on the front end of this to take care of those and work through those. And and we've already worked with our contractors from last year to retain them for this year to install those 2021 improvements. They have those materials ready to go that they're able to acquire over kind of our off-season kind of piece of installations. So those can for sure go in first thing this spring. So it's really just on us to try and get out earlier and communicate sooner with those aspects to try and get out ahead of any of those issues. And if they do arise, that we kind of have that time built in on the back end to just take care of those.
That's excellent. I'm also wondering if there's any barriers that may not have been a problem in the past, but I'm thinking in choosing subcontractors or sourcing materials where there might be a preference for whatever's cheapest rather than whatever has the most local materials, or if there are any barriers internal in the system that restrict the options for what can be used or put dependence on a global supply chain instead of a local reuse chain or anything. And that might be more of a comment. I'm glad you're looking at it, and I hope you continue to, since I can't imagine that this will be getting easier.
I appreciate those comments, and yeah, we look at, there's different materials we can use, and we definitely look at those of what's readily available, and also weighing that measure against what's readily available versus something that might only last us a little bit of time. And so there's kind of that cost benefit analysis that we're also putting into those pieces too. So but
when you're weighing that, are you using the social cost of carbon as part of the metrics to make that choice? Like if we're delaying a year, that's already, is that part of how you measure and analyze it?
So when we're going through this, we are aware of those aspects, and we're really out there trying to put safety as one of, and obviously we understand the safeties of environmental hazards, and trying to make those as quickly as possible. So it is something that we don't want to delay any further than it needs to be. So we're rapidly trying to get these in as quickly as we can. And if that means that we can put in some improvements, in 1 year, and a couple of those other pieces have to wait, until the next year. Unfortunately, we are trying to get as many of the improvements as we can, if that means kind of shifting who's installing for that year or what those materials are.
Okay. And just to clarify, the social cost of carbon policy that was passed about 3 years ago is not part of how you analyze within these choices. I don't know if it was intended to be part of this. I just am not sure where it's being used around the city.
From my knowledge, I don't think it was intended that is directly impact within this particular program.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. We've slipped a little bit behind schedule, but not much. Christian, thank you very much for the presentation. And I think we'll push on to the 51st Avenue Reconstruction presentation. So thank you, Christian. Let's see, Katie and Ahmed, who's here? Oh, I think Katie's here.
Hi, I don't think Ahmed's here today.
Okay.
Screen. I am going to be sharing a little not a PowerPoint. I'm not sharing a PowerPoint today. I am sharing a 1-page or 4-pager really document, but I have an email ready to go to Chris to share with BAC and PAC with the latest information that I wasn't able to get in time to meet your LIMS submission cutoff. So I have more information for you. It'll be coming in an email shortly after this. So I am here introducing 0% First Avenue South Reconstruction. I'm going to zoom out so we can see more of the extents of this project. First Avenue South is right in the middle of the city. Really, we're looking on the south end, Lake Street here, crossing the Midtown Greenway, which I'll come back to, and stopping here at Franklin Avenue. This green segment will be reconstructed in 2024. And then Franklin Avenue up to Grant Street, right at the Convention Center, that will be reconstructed in 2025. And I'm going to call out a couple of key points along the corridor to start. Lake Street, of course, the Lake Street Kmart happening right at this site. First Avenue is the eastern border of the Kmart site. So we'll be working closely with the Kmart site as they move through their very extensive engagement process over the next couple of years as they move towards demolition, potentially in 2024 of Kmart. We are crossing the Midtown Greenway Bridge here, and the replacement of the bridge itself is included in this work. So we are taking comments on the bridge itself and the future bridge. So that's an important component of this project for 2024, and it's a driving factor in our schedule because this historic bridge takes so much effort to replace. I also want to call it Franklin Avenue. I imagine I'll be here speaking with you in probably 4 to 8 weeks about the Franklin Avenue project. Hennepin County is reconstructing Franklin through here in 2025. I am the city's representative on that project, and also in a I don't like this word, but very good synergy here. One of our consultants on First Avenue South is also one of the consultants on the Franklin Avenue project the county is leading. So we're looking forward to, fewer duplicative work, better communication between the projects as a result of that. And then First Avenue from Franklin to Grant again in 2025. So, this is also the location where we had the Whittier Lindale Bikeway go in 2021. The engagement for that was 2019 and 2020, I think. And so we have a temporary condition on First Avenue South right now. And it's a very good trial to see what works and what doesn't work. And so we'd like to hear folks' opinion about how First Avenue South has been improved for the pedestrian experience or could be improved further in the pedestrian experience, recognizing that this two-way protected bikeway that exists on First Avenue South today could be improved. We think that the bikeway is going to stay on the west side of the street still. We're pretty confident in that, but we do want to hear everyone's feedback on that. The character of the street changes a little bit as you move from 28th on the south to Grant on the north, but it essentially looks very similar to this throughout. And then in your handout, there's other cross sections of what that looks like. So what I'm going to send Chris is a link to the project website where there will be more information. Also on the project website, it's not there yet, but we are going to put up the information needed to join a virtual open house on Tuesday, March 8th at 6 p.m. And so we'll have a link to join that meeting from the project webpage. I'm also going to be sending to Chris a link to essentially a wiki map, so you can post your comments along the corridor about what does work, what doesn't work, and where there are safety concerns. As I said, the first open house is March 8th, and we're actually going to turn around pretty quickly to our second round of engagement, probably in late April or early May, because so much pre-work has been done with the bikeway that was put in with paint and bollards as a temporary condition. We're able to come up with concepts a lot quicker than we normally would. And so I think our second round of engagement will be in the height of spring, and then hopefully coming to layout approval late summer or early fall. So that's the timeline for this work. And I think I'll stop there and take any questions, since this is just an introduction to the project.
Well, thank you, Katie. We'll look forward to that material in the near future. I do not see anyone's hands. Does anyone have any specific response to Katie's question regarding the temporary testing that was done on First Avenue South, or other comments or questions? I don't see any. Nor, well, terrific. Julia, I can't. What? Are you still with us? I'm teasing.
Me?
Yeah, I'm teasing. I was teasing. No, seriously, if nobody has a specific question, what we'll do is we'll wait for the information to come in a couple of weeks, as well as look forward to the open house in first week in March, and go from there, because you'll be returning on this and other projects. So, last chance for anyone to ask any questions or give a feedback regarding First Avenue South.
Just
Not
one.
Oh, yep. Go ahead, Julia.
One very quick comment. I know I'm looking at the estimated daily users, and it would be awesome if we could have something that kind of looks at based on what we know of destinations or using streetlight data, what I'm sure there's people who drive because they don't feel safe enough to bike. I would be interested in data that reflects more the potential daily users by modes based on distance of trip or origin destination, that kind of thing. I know that's probably way more difficult, but given how our streets are designed for cars, not for people, that feels like it would be more informative.
Yes, we are going to be significantly changing the street, the car portion of the street in the redesign. This is going to be, in the temporary condition, we moved it to 1 lane northbound, and we will be advancing that for almost the entire corridor in the reconstruct as well. The 2-way bike facility will be at sidewalk height, and I think we're going to see a significant reduction in parking. And so just the asphalt, for cars is going to be significantly narrowed up.
And yeah, that is awesome. I think my comment is specifically on the way the information is presented. It reflects current usage, not necessarily expected usage, if that makes sense. And because it's so car dominated, I worry that people could interpret it as, I worry it's not the best data for the lens of what we're looking to do and what we know or could know based on things like streetlight data.
Yeah,
if I'm not making sense, no worries.
No, I understand. And that's why I don't spend a lot of time looking at those numbers, because I recognize that that's not exactly what we want to focus on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Katie. And yeah, we'll look forward to those future opportunities and future information. So with that, I think we'll go to 26th Avenue North and the Olson Park Trail. Let's see, that's Tyler. I saw Tyler is here. Tyler, jump on in.
Yes, I am here. All right. Bear with me as I share my screen.
Hey, Tyler, your voice is coming across a little quiet, at least for me.
Okay. How is it right now?
Faint. It's faint.
Yeah, very quiet.
How about now?
Good.
Much better.
Okay. I have my headphones on backwards. Silly me. All right. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. All right, thank you all for allowing myself and a member of the team here, Greg Brown, to help us out and present this this really unique and fun project to you all. Right now, as the screen says, we're at 0%, so we haven't done much, but basically just collecting a lot of information and talking to a lot of people. There we go. So as I said, my name is Tyler Pedersen. I'm a project manager over at the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. And we have Kimley Horn is our lead firm for the design team. Greg Brown is with me as well. He'll speak in just a few moments. And then we have Bill Smith helping us out with some community engagement. And at the bottom there is our project webpage. Feel free to check it out. Some cool stuff on there right now. Today we'll just be quick going over the project background and goals, the scope, check out some photos, go through a few real estate considerations. We do have to cross over BNSF property and under their bridge, as well as private property. And then we'll talk a little bit about planning considerations things we want to make sure we include in the project, and then just chat a little bit about a concept alignment that we have. So this is the gap. So this is the little blue streak up and down. That's the Mississippi River. The freeway on the left-hand side of the image is I-94, and the horizontal magenta line is 26th Avenue North, and the vertical magenta line is the trail system, or the trails along West River Road there. So we're trying to fill in that 100-foot gap. So this project kind of stems from the earliest phases of Above the Falls master planning. So going back 15 or more years, it's been a long project trying to plan riverfront park expansion in North Minneapolis and Northeast Minneapolis above Plymouth Avenue. So one of the key things was to continue the pattern of regional park trail system along the river, and this is one key piece to that, this project here. So it links up 26th Avenue North, the bike and walkway that's brand new along there, with the kind of the end point of the Grand Rounds Regional Park system along the riverfront, at which currently ends at Ole Olson Park. So the project scope, as I mentioned, right now we're kind of getting a bunch of information, talking to a lot of people, trying to get the word out, trying to really get some feedback on what you all and what folks would want to see. Then we'll jump into some concept development refinements. We've got a lot of data to collect. We've got a lot of coordination with adjacent landowners. The site has some geotechnical issues. The bluff is not quite a natural bluff. There's a lot of junk in it. So we got to figure out how to engineer our way through that. And then there's the river impacts. There's a floodway. There's some wetlands that are down there. It's a river that goes up and down. So we got to take that into consideration. And then we want to make sure that it's an experience and not just kind of a through route for a trail. This is an important link for North Minneapolis. There's been a little bit of ignoring of those connections into North Minneapolis, being cut through or bisected from the river by the freeway. So we want to try and restore some of those connections to the river and the river to them, and make it an experience. And then of course, the practical portions of it, construction documents, and then construction beginning in about 2 years. So here's some photos of it real quick. So Ole Olson Park looking north on the riverfront, really beautiful bridge. I think maybe the beauty is an eye of the beholder, but in my opinion, pretty nice looking bridge. Underneath it, it's kind of a mess right now. There's it's kind of a hidden spot. So we'd like to introduce a good positive use for this site, and try and make it feel safer, things like that. But that's kind of underneath the bridge there. And then also along the riverfront, there is kind of a flat, usable space on the south side of the bridge, which we're going to try and utilize a little bit. And then a photo of us kind of hanging out underneath the bridge. So there's quite a bit of vertical space to kind of maneuver through, and some good artwork there as well. And then north of the bridge is a little bit trickier. It's private land to the river, and then there's a pretty steep bluff with 2-to-1, if not 1-to-1 slopes. It's darn hard to walk up it, that's for sure. So the real estate considerations that I've been kind of talking about, we do have to get a license from BNSF to go under their bridge. There's going to be some clearance requirements and some other little bits and pieces that we have to kind of work through. That shouldn't be too difficult, but it is a decent amount of time and process to get through it. And then the acquisition from Continental Cement, we are working with them to acquire a portion of their land that is unused and cross through there in a safe way that respects their safety as well as the safety of users traveling through the site, because they do have large machinery and trucks and trains and things like that. You got to work through that. And I think, Greg, was I going to pass it over to you now?
Yeah, I could take it from here.
Great, thanks.
Flexible. I think this is where we handed off last time. But so as Tyler mentioned kind of early on, we're looking at it as not just a trail connection, although it's certainly an important trail connection, but really keeping the experience, the trail user experience in the forefront of our minds as we lay out the alignments and look at the grades and kind of how we're connecting to things. There's a lot of opportunities to improve or create fishing locations, whether that's just on the bank or maybe it's a short pier, those kinds of things. Picnicking, launching canoes and kayaks, just resting, looking at the river. So, getting down, touching the river is kind of a unique and not available in a lot of the areas of the riverfront now. So this offers that opportunity in some locations. The other thing we want to do, or one of the other things we want to do from a design perspective, is to have this be a seamless connection to the existing trails. At the end of the day, we want this connection, it's just 1,000 feet, but to appear as if it was designed and created or conceived along with the rest of the riverfront trails. And we know the trails will continue to go north from 26th Avenue, hopefully sooner than later, but we want to keep that in mind in our design as well, so that it's kind of continuous in feel and in character to the rest of the caliber of the riverfront trails. To the extent we can separate bikes and peds, just like much of the riverfront trail system is, we're going to look at that. And we're kind of, I would say, I'm cautiously optimistic we can get a good portion of this as a separate facility, so the two modes won't necessarily have to mix unless we have some pinch points, and we clearly do have some pinch points. But our goal will be to try to create some separate trails to the extent we can. Tyler talked about the river bluff. It isn't really a natural bluff. It's kind of a industrial landfill of sorts from back in the day, but we'll try to kind of minimize impacts to that, both from the standpoint of what vegetation is there and just cost and complexity and complications to the trail design and project cost itself. I think anything we do grade, we'll be looking at restoring, and ideally to a higher caliber natural environment or natural character than that exists today, and doing some selective clearing and things so that there are vistas that people can utilize, because the views both up the river and towards downtown are quite spectacular in this area. So it'd be nice for more people to get that opportunity. I think the next slide has our graphic of kind of our schematic. So this helps maybe outline where things are today. So Ole Olson Park, which is kind of right in the left center there, is the terminus of the trails system today on the riverfront. And that's likely going to still be a kind of a U-turn or a circle trail around that park. But what we'd like to do is take the bike trail that exists south of there, extend that up through, and then the green trail is the riverfront walking trail. Again, like I had mentioned, we'd like to make it a sinuous, seamless kind of path that would take a walker closer to the river. So you're kind of up on the bank at the connection point here. Like to try to get you down towards the river, but kind of hovering or flirting with that 100-year floodplain elevation. So it's stay a little bit out of trouble from that perspective. Then as you get to the bridge, you can see in the exhibit, both trails kind of kiss up to each other. We're trying to look at alignments that are utilizing the existing grade that's right around that floodplain elevation without having to build structure or other, more expensive kind of improvements. And that should also translate to a better experience. It means we won't have to have railings on the edge of the trail, or at least be very, very limited if we did, when we can just kind of grade down, and then people could stroll down into that flat area. Tyler showed us that photo down by the bridge or to the south side of the bridge. It's a relatively flat, accessible area to the riverfront, and be very attractive for people as they come in on the walking trail there, just to kind of stray off if they have some time and touch the water. Then as you leave the bridge or cross under the bridge and head north, we'll be going, or presumably we're going into Continental Cement's property under easement. Then we'll be looking at, in that stretch, can we get two separate trails, or do they need to be connected? That's going to be kind of a iterative process in connection with the property acquisition discussions and how much land that takes and how all that works. But in general, we're hoping to run these trails kind of on roughly on the top of the bluff. We have to cut down and get down, but so the natural vegetation on the bluff, or the volunteer vegetation that's grown up over the years, largely be unimpeded. We'll be looking at the slopes, of course, as we always do on these, especially the pedestrian route, and try to, for sure, stay under 5 to the extent we can get grades that are in the 3.5 or 4% for longer runs. That would certainly be a goal as well. But our intent is to be no more than 5% on the pedestrian trail. Then as far as engagement, there's a number of neighborhoods that will have access to the river via 26th Avenue, which this will connect to. And that includes Hawthorne, Jordan, and then the business district kind of includes not just the businesses right around there, but the West Broadway businesses. There's some organizations that are focused on biking or trails in the area, the Great Northern, Greenway, the Major Taylor Biking Club. There's quite a few churches that are kind of in that 26th Avenue corridor. So we're reaching out to those groups. We'd like to solicit any input from this committee on other groups that you don't see here that you think might be advantageous to be on the list, either get invited to meetings or maybe it's even a one-on-one meeting that we have with them regarding any specific design interests that they might have. And our next steps are a public meeting that's coming up here fairly soon, a week from today. And that will be kind of the first introduction of the project, at least by public meeting, to the community. Very similar to this discussion, kind of introduction, soliciting some input on priorities and desires. And then following that, we'll start to get serious about developing concepts and costs and alternatives, and kind of reviewing and vetting those with property owners, the community, yourselves, and working towards a recommended alignment and recommended scope of work, if you will, after that point.
All right, so that's about it. As Greg had mentioned, if anybody has any comments or suggestions on folks in the public or groups that we should be contacting, please feel free to yell them out. Otherwise, any general comments we'd love to help answer.
Let me just thank you, Tyler and Greg, for the presentation. I don't see any hands up right now, but is there? I'm just trying to think of what sort of waterborne organizations use the river with some regularity. I mean, like, you know, Crew is, I think the closest one is the U under the Washington Avenue Bridge, then Minnesota Boat Club all the way on Navy Island. But there's got to be canoers or kayaks that maybe have an umbrella organization. Seems like when I ever want to find something like that, I go to the bulletin board inside Midwest Mountaineering, and all my answers are there. But does anybody have a comment, question, or a suggestion as to another group that might be interested in being a little bit more involved in this?
You may have, I don't know if this was on the list. I didn't see that in what was sent around. And if you said juxtaposition arts, I may have missed it, but I'm just thinking when I have walked around there is a fair amount of graffiti, and I'm not sure if that was the photo you were sharing about art, but I do enjoy seeing it. I don't know what the overlap between, you know, people working with juxtaposition and the graffiti community might be, but that is honestly one of the draws to that space for me. The safety issue is getting down that slope, trying to figure out what to hold on to and what's broken glass. So that might be another, if it's not on your list already, reaching out to them to maybe work with that style of art and that presence that's already in place there. And I also have a question about if you're looking at continuing the connection north of 26th at any point.
Yeah, so thank you for the comment on juxtaposition arts. We work with them quite a bit, and I think that's an easy contact we can solicit. So as far as going north, you know, this project, you know, we really are focused on getting under the bridge. It is of paramount importance that it's successful, but with this, we are going to be exploring. As we connect to the 26th Avenue overlook, we're going to be exploring, you know, what makes sense going north from there, so that we're teeing us up real nicely for that future expansion. We don't want to spend a bunch of money now on that connection and then not have it make sense, you know, even 10 years from now, because it is conceivable 10 years from now it could happen. Same thing on the south side. You know, we really want to make sure it's the flow and the feel and the character is very similar to what's there now along the riverfront and the rest of our Grand Round system. And then the other item we're going to be looking at, and not in great detail, but just kind of, again, planning for that future movement, is going across the bridge into Northeast Minneapolis. So we have a really strong connection between north and northeast, because that's a huge, it'd be a phenomenal connection. And it's kind of pie in the sky now, but it's in several of our plans that are approved, both city and park board plans. But it's going to be challenging, but with both going north and east, but we're going to plan for it.
Do you happen to have the numbers? I know that's a bridge that's fairly easy to cross as a pedestrian, and is, I mean, I always am seeing other people on it when I'm there. And I know that's probably not what the railroad, I think it's one where they kind of accept it, but it might not be their ideal. But I'm curious if you have pedestrian numbers and bicyclists. I also see people with bikes.
You know, I may or may not have ridden my mountain bike across it. I can't. I would not do it again. It's open. What do you call it? Open ties. So there's no grading, nothing like that. You're taking your life into your own hands. So
yeah, it's definitely a very cautious walk across.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's that one, but
yeah.
Exhilarating.
It is.
So yeah,
well, there's a lot to look at too.
Yeah, people do it. The railroad company does not want people to do it. It is trespassing. So it's something that we want to work towards, because it's just such a great connection. That's why people do it.
Yeah, I mean, especially on foot, the distance saved is humongous.
Yeah.
All right. Well, not seeing any other hands or hearing any other questions. Taylor and Greg, thank you. And
can I one last point of clarification, I think, is that I think this area is one where I have mudlarks, and I've talked to others who have as well. So I'm not aware of any groups working on that, but it's just something to keep in mind. I've also had friends find large agates, so the curve of the river is doing something to catch stuff that's particularly interesting.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll shift over to the fifth item in the agenda, the Beeline, BRT, and Lake Street. Let's see, we've got Yasna and Kathleen. Is that it? Who's here?
Yeah, it's going to be me. Good evening, everyone. Yasna Hadjic-Stanek, Transportation Planner in TPP Public Works. And then I'm actually joined by our agency guests, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cody Olson. I'm a community outreach coordinator for Metro Transit, working specifically in South Minneapolis and specifically on the Beeline project.
Hi, I'm Chad Ellis. I manage transportation planning at Hennepin County, and am working on this Lake Street and Beeline project.
Great. Well, welcome. Take it away.
Great. Chad, are you going to be sharing your screen?
I can. Let me do that. One moment. I will try that again. Sorry, everyone. Bear with me. And are you seeing my screen or the presentation now?
Yes.
Okay. So I will ask Cody to kick it off.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chad. Hello, everyone. Here to talk a little bit about the Beeline before we get into the broader Lake Street improvements. I wanted to just provide a quick overview of the project for those that aren't familiar. The Beeline is a 12.6 mile transit corridor along Lake Street, Marshall Avenue, and Selby Avenue. It's a substantial replacement of the Route 21, which is Metro Transit's highest ridership bus route, but our slowest in-service speed route. So what that means is second highest amount of users on this bus, but also as it's performing its service, it is our slowest bus while it's doing that. So in order to make improvements to what is a huge workhorse route in our system, the Beeline is intended to provide the substantial replacement with service every 10 minutes, and that service end to end being approximately 20% faster than the Route 21. The Route 21 is not going away with this project. The Route 21 will remain between Hennepin Avenue and Minnehaha Avenue in Minneapolis, with local service to the same stops that it serves today at a reduced rate of once every half hour. Another good point to remember, as I talk about with Route 21 being our second highest ridership route, it's also been extremely strong during the pandemic. It serves a lot of people and serves a lot of different needs. And it is a key option for a good number of people. This project is fully funded via federal, state, and metropolitan council funds, and is targeted to open in 2024. And on this page, there's a map that just shows the route all the way from the West Lake Street Green Line station on the far side of Minneapolis to downtown St. Paul and Union Depot. A little bit of an overview on kind of general BRT service. As I mentioned, it has limited stops and frequent service. And so your typical local bus might be stopping, almost every block, especially in some parts of Lake Street. And so with BRT, one of the ways we're really able to speed up that trip by 20% is by stopping significantly less at key intersections where people are already using the bus. And so generally BRT stations are about a third to half mile between stations, depending on kind of community need and what the built environment is and where people are boarding. Another way we're able to speed up this service is via pay before you board. The BRT buses are kind of similar to like a train on wheels. people pay before they get on the bus, and then they can enter and exit through each of the 3 doors. So it helps speed up the process by not having people, kind of queuing up at the front, paying cash, waiting for that. There's also ticket machines at the stations as well for those that don't have a go-to card. One of the big features for both buses and pedestrians are curb extensions to help the bus avoid that kind of pulling in and out of bays effect that drivers not letting the bus merge back into traffic. So with curb extensions, we're able to keep the bus in the lane and avoid a lot of those delays. And then something pretty big we're going to be talking about later are things like transit advantages, things like transit signal priority, which allow the buses to speak to traffic signals, and things like queue jump lanes and bus approach lanes and bus only lanes are things that we've looked at, and we'll talk about those more a little bit later. So again, in terms of schedule, we've been working on this project since April of 2019. We've been engaging with communities along the corridor. Since then, we had initial recommendations and planning, followed by the release of a corridor plan in 2021 that we then throughout 2021 finalized and really got those stations to a point where we could start engineering and building them. So that work, the engineering work, is underway right now. It started in fall 2021 and will last throughout this year. And then starting in 2023, we'll begin construction. That'll be a 2-year construction ending in 2024.
So segueing now into our Lake Street improvements, again, a separate but aligned effort with the Beeline BRT. A little background on the Lake Street corridor. I know we're all very well familiar with this culturally vibrant and important corridor of huge significance, not just in our city, but the county. It is owned and operated by the county while Minneapolis manages the traffic signals. And outside of downtown, it has some of the heaviest pedestrian crossing counts observed in all of Hennepin County, including 300 daily pedestrian crossings at Lake Street. Between Blaisdell and Cedar Avenue, City of Minneapolis has also designated that portion of Lake Street as a cultural district. The segment of Lake Street from DuPont all the way to the river was reconstructed only 15 years ago, so assets are in good conditions, but there is some need to redo the pavement. We also know that, I'm so sorry, on the other slide, if you go back. In addition to all the great things that are happening along Lake Street, we also know that there's a lot of communities experiencing hardships. The area between Hennepin and Hiawatha is identified as an area of concentrated poverty. As we're all well familiar, Lake Street is the highest crash corridor in all of Minneapolis and one of the highest in all of county. So it's identified as a high injury street in our Vision Zero action plan. As we all know, it was the site of civil unrest in 2020, and the area between 35W to Hiawatha is identified as the Minneapolis Southside Green Zone. Next slide. So for over a year now, we have been working together very closely in partnership with Metro Transit and Hennepin County to address some of the corridor-wide improvements through a shared vision and approach. So we have some goals where all 3 agencies are aligned, including increasing transit speed and reliability through this regional project that Metro Transit is leading, improving safety for all modes due to our Vision Zero status of the corridor, and then lastly, improving conditions and comfort for people walking, not only people who are trying to use transit, but also crossing Lake Street to access the business. At the same time, it made sense to combine all of our county and city investments of including signal modifications, pavement needs, as I mentioned, the need for a mill and overlay, as well as ADA upgrades at a lot of the intersections into one single project in order to minimize impacts to the communities, but also the businesses along the corridor. So we're really taking this as an opportunity to combine all of our efforts and leverage this transit project to do investments along the entire corridor. Next slide. So through weekly coordination meetings over the past year and a half, we evaluated several concepts, which Chad will show in terms of what we ended up with for the restriping of Lake Street. And we really kept several things in the back of our heads as we were looking what type of changes we can make to Lake Street. So first, we looked at all of our existing plans and policies, including our city's recently adopted Transportation Action Plan, the county's Climate Action Plan, Vision Zero, and so on. We also did a lot of traffic and transit operational modeling, which means we looked at the traffic volume data to see where we can restripe some of the segments of Lake Street to allow changes from 4 to 3 lanes. And then lastly, where we did have some competing priorities, we did have to rely on staff expertise to really help us balance out those priorities and constraints on the corridor. So keeping in mind that this is not a full reconstruction, really the changes that we are addressing are between the curbs and include new pavement through the corridor, restriping to enhance safety and bus operations, and then bus lanes in certain areas which are dominated by westbound bus-only lanes, which Chad will show a figure that kind of shows where we were able to apply those.
There we go.
Chad?
Thank you. I'm good to go now. So I just want to show this as a representative cross-section of restriping that's being considered between DuPont and Blaisdell. Also, anywhere there's this the 4-lane undivided with parking on both sides, which also occurs 3rd Avenue to Portland, 10th to 21st, and east of Minnehaha to the Mississippi River. And we'll go over some other representative cross sections in a few slides here that kind of show some of the other areas, including the one-way pairs of Lake and Lagoon. So just on this figure here, just really point out what you see on the bottom would be the proposed concept with a bus lane in one direction next to a 3-lane roadway versus above that in the existing is the 4-lane section with 2-lane travel lanes in each direction. So this figure, as Yasna mentioned, it shows proposed bus lanes in a bus priority concept. It shows bus lanes in each direction between West Bade-Makaska Parkway and DuPont Avenue. Between DuPont and the Mississippi River, it's mostly dominated by a westbound bus-only lane. Certain areas we are able to get an westbound, proposed westbound and eastbound bus lanes, particularly in that Park in Portland area where the roadway is, there's more right-of-way available there and pavement between the curves. This is just to kind of, for scale, the red on this figure represents over, I believe, 6 miles of bus-only lanes. So the next 6 slides are snapshots of different areas along the B-line route, illustrating this bus priority concept and indicating where additional study or consideration is still ongoing with our project partners. This slide shows the West Bade-Makaska Parkway Station area where the concept proposes bus lanes in each direction from here to DuPont Avenue. The existing condition is essentially a 3-lane, one-way roadways to DuPont. And this proposes converting that outside lane to a bus-only lane. Next representative section we chose to share is at Hennepin Avenue with the one-way pair of Lake and Lagoon intersecting. Of note here is the proposed E-line bus rapid transit route that will also be crossing on Hennepin Avenue, crossing the B-line route. Here again, as shown previous, that outside through lane proposed to be converted to a bus-only lane. Next is the Lake and Lindale station area. This is a location where the transit and traffic analysis recommended additional westbound through capacity to achieve acceptable transit and traffic operations. This similar section is being recommended at Lindale, Bloomington, and Cedar Avenues, other higher volume cross streets on this corridor. As mentioned in the yellow note, if you're able to read that, additional data collection analysis is anticipated at these locations as the design continues and even after construction to determine if further striping modifications should occur. Next is near the recently reconstructed area at Interstate 35W. More analysis needed here as well with our other project partner, MnDOT, to discuss potentially redesignating the outside lanes as bus only through this area. Cedar and Lake Station area, again, similar to Lindale, additional, the transit and traffic analysis recommend additional westbound through capacity here. This is another area that will be studied for further evaluation for that westbound lane if it can be converted to bus only. And then lastly, this slide represents the section between Minnehaha Avenue and the Mississippi River, generally showing the 3-lane section with the westbound bus only lane, again, similar to parts of the corridor to the east. So now I'd like to kind of shift into what we're doing for engagement and communication. As Yasna mentioned, a lot of this is between the curbs. The assets are in good condition. So we are applying what we've heard through previous engagement efforts that are listed here to really help with our work in developing this concept and working with our 3 partner agencies. Just want to point out with these efforts, more than 800 comments are submitted through Metro Transit's corridor planning process. Minneapolis staff had heard from thousands of people on their recent efforts with the Transportation Action Plan, Vision Zero Action Plan, and the Minneapolis 2040 Plan. And the common themes are a desire for more improved and faster transit, improving safety on this high crash streets, and desire for pedestrian improvements along busy corridors. We are kicking off some additional communication engagement as we speak here. So Metro Transit's had their Beeline project website up for a long time now, but Hennepin County has just developed and put out there this website on hennepin.us. And we plan on getting this information out to our neighborhood organizations. We're planning on doing that next week. Some of the things we're working toward before that notification goes out is working on the pre-recorded presentation similar to what we're going through today here live that people could watch on their own time. Also setting up a daytime and evening live virtual open house sometime in mid-March where questions can be submitted and answered by agency staff from Metro Transit Minneapolis and Hennepin County. So those follow-ups will be coming. Also want to point out just there have been council member briefings and commissioner briefings going on by staff, and then these meetings. Today's PAC. The BAC is scheduled for March 8th. The Hennepin County Active Transportation Committee is February 28th, and then the PWI Committee on the March 31st, and City Council on April 14th. And then last slide, just what we need to do for next steps is really get those communications out to businesses and stakeholders in the neighborhood communities, finalize additional scope to be included in the Beeline project, work with our agency partners here to seek funding and support each other to implement a vision such as this, and then really just keep moving forward with the finalizing of plans to get this constructed, as mentioned by Cody, in the 23 to 2024 timeframe. That's all for me. Do you have any questions?
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Does anybody on the pack have a question or a comment? Jump in if you do. I don't see any hands raised. That, of course, goes to our. Ah, great.
Will you be coming back to the pack to present when you've finalized all your plans and gone through all this engagement? Will you be coming back to us, or are you looking for some sort of support from us or a resolution?
Yeah, let me hold on if we're going to be coming back question, but we are looking for a resolution from the PAC. As Chad showed, we are going to be presenting to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee on March 31st and bringing this through council for receive and file. So we're not going to be asking for approval, but we were directed last year during the Transportation Public Works Committee by the council to consider including bus-only lanes on along the corridor. So we'll be going back to the new committee, the PWI, to bring that back as a receive and file item. And something that would be helpful for us is a resolution by this group on whether you support this new alignment and restriping plan. So that would be helpful. In terms of whether we plan to come back, we typically don't bring our BRT projects through the PAC, BAC, and we are doing this because it's a little bit different. It is, you know, we want to be transparent about the other changes that are going to be occurring on Lake Street. So maybe that's something I can chat with Chris and Millicent, and we can get you an answer on that. But for now, we are looking for a resolution.
Okay.
With that in mind, does anybody have any comments or questions before we start thinking through the substance of the motion? Was that Julia?
Yes, I'm curious what it would take to get dedicated bus lanes throughout the corridor, or what kinds of trade-offs there are in the time that might be gained with that.
Are you thinking like on both sides, eastbound and westbound?
Correct. Really, you're having full transit priority. I understand that that may not be what is being looked at initially, but what would be the conditions?
Yeah, no, good question. Yeah, it was looked at, and I'll have maybe Chad talk a little bit about that. I'll just say we could probably have an hour meeting just to talk about all the scenarios that we did look at. And that's where the transit and traffic modeling, and Chad, I don't know if you maybe want to go into that, but we did look at that, so.
Yes, I can just mention a few things from that past reconstruction project. A lot of the corridors that doesn't have the transit lanes in both directions was the 4-lane out there today, and it's a narrow 4-lane compared to other county roads that were built. So there's really, and then it's got parking on both sides, and the bump outs are mostly out there with that project. So there's kind of 4 lanes to deal with. The way to get that in would be to have essentially a 2-lane road, no turn lanes, and then bus lanes on both sides. That would add up to the 4. That was studied and looked at, and without turn lanes, the operations of the roadway just suffered. Anytime you'd have to ban all left turns at most locations, maybe not at the 35W where it widens out or High Lake, but it was looked at, and it based on it was kind of catastrophic to the traffic out there. And it really spilled back and started affecting some of the transit operations as well, getting onto the corridor where those bus lanes actually started. So that's where it more led to, okay, we need turn lanes, and turn lanes offer a huge safety benefit as well. So what space are we left with, and where should that be? What should have priority? And it was the transit should have priority, should take that space. And then it was, should it be eastbound or westbound? And that's what got us to this bus priority concept.
Okay, and I guess part of my interest is knowing how quickly we need to be reducing emissions, particularly from transportation in Minneapolis. Also knowing that 31st runs parallel and actually crosses the highway, unlike some of the other, sometimes those highways are like rivers. So I'm curious what it would take for this to be reevaluated in terms of mode share shift or the ability of adjacent thoroughfares to take some of the vehicle traffic.
Well, I can just offer that was not in the scope of this project, but it wouldn't be precluded by this project occurring, because essentially the curb lines are staying the same. Most of them are in good condition and were rebuilt. So that could happen in the future, I would say. And this is mainly outside of the station areas. There's some curb work to get those curbs to the right height. But outside of that, it's new pavement and new stripes on the road and some signal upgrades to support a new section. But it's not precluding any further study to happen at any time beyond this project to try to bring in parallel corridors to help meet those goals.
Okay. So just to clarify, you don't know if, you don't have data from or didn't look at the streetlight data around destinations, or kind of seeing if you could guess what % of trips might be able to be picked up by transit if there were programs incentivizing it more, or if this provided enough of a speed boost and regularity boost for some people to transition. Like that was outside the scope of what you were looking at in this project.
Yes, outside the scope of this project, but all those things you mentioned are in our minds, and we're being asked by our leadership to work to incorporate those types of analyses moving forward as policies are being considered around climate action at the local level, the county level, and the state level.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Julia. Barb, did you have your hand up again?
I do.
Okay, yes.
I have a question. So the westbound transit lane that's dedicated is for both the BRT and the 21, as somebody said that the 21 was good. So both of those transit facilities will be used in that westbound. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. All Metro Transit buses will use the bus only lanes.
Oh. And so what about eastbound? Where will that be? For when the 21 goes eastbound and westbound. So where will they, do you know what I'm asking? I'm not understanding this completely.
When the bus is not using a transit only lane, it will just operate in general traffic like it does today.
Okay, so it'll just operate. Okay. And was there any consideration for removing some of the parking lanes? Because it looks like there's parking lanes on both sides of the street to add other dedicated transit lines, or was that not seen as a possibility?
I can take that. That was not seen as a possibility with the scope of this study, as we're trying to find funding to even achieve what we're talking about today. So the parking lanes are 8 feet wide out there. So just removing one side is not wide enough for a bus lane. So you'd actually have to remove parking probably on both sides if you were to kind of keep the same section we have to add one. And that we were not ready to tackle that with this project, partially from a parking removal standpoint, but also just from a infrastructure standpoint. There's so many bump outs out there from our past project. That would be a lot of curb work and a lot of extra cost. to this. Essentially, it's an overlay restriping project, most of this.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Great. If anybody has just a very quick question or comment, we will move on to the last item on our agenda, and we're sort of on schedule. Seeing none or hearing none, thank you. Let's see, Cody, Chad, and Yasma. So thank you, and I think we see you again, Yasna, with who again? Christian again, for the final agenda item about safe routes to school. So we can just transition to that. We'll be in good shape.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Thanks again for having me today to introduce the Green Central Safe Routes to School project, which is named after Richard Green Central Park Elementary School. I am, again, Yasna Hadjic-Stanek, and I'm working on this project with Christian Zimmerman, who presented earlier, but he had to sign off. So, yeah, let's go. So today, I'm gonna just go over, just have a couple slides to share. Shouldn't take too long. I'll go over the project introduction, some of our existing city policies and plans, existing conditions, talk about the Green Central Safe Routes School Plan, and go over some next steps. So this school, the Richard Green Elementary School, was selected as a Safe Routes to School focus area by the city through a data-driven process that focused on school demographics, potential users, and known pedestrian safety issues. As you all know, the overall goal and focus of our Safe Routes to School program is to make it easier for kids to walk and bike to school by providing pedestrian and bicycle facilities and improving traffic safety. Historically, Safe Routes to School projects typically include bikeway improvements, traffic calming elements, pedestrian crossing improvements, as well as lighting. In addition to the overall Safe Routes to School program goal, we do have some project goals, which include improving traffic safety for people walking and bicycling, improving the bike network connectivity and access to nearby destinations. There's a total of 4 schools and 2 parks in this area alone. Our third goal is addressing traffic safety at documented high injury street intersections, and there's quite a few, which I'll share on the next slide. And lastly, enhancing the comfort and improving predictability for all users and making sure they have the space in our right-of-way to walk and bike safely. So this is our project area here. So this is a $2 million federally funded project. So as I mentioned, it will implement pedestrian and bicycle related improvements along 34th Street from 4th Avenue all the way to Powderhorn Park, so 10th Avenue. And then from here, we actually show 2 different alignments, which we will take through community engagement to decide which alignment will serve as our bikeway and pedestrian connection all the way north here to the Midtown Greenway and the bicycle facility on 28th Street. 11th actually would go through a huge chunk of Powderhorn Park, and then it would kind of end right at Anderson Middle School here, north of the Greenway. 10th Avenue and 11th already has some existing traffic calming treatments, including speed humps at several locations here. In terms of 10th Avenue, this is another segment which I will show, but it's identified in our city's AAA network, All Ages and Ability Network, and both streets cross several of our high injury streets, including 31st, Lake, which we just talked about, and then also on 34th, we have Portland, Park, and then Chicago, where the future D-line will cross over. So Green Central is located right here. Then we have a couple of school and education centers right here in the corner of 34th and 10th, and then a preschool kind of in the middle. And then, like I said, Anderson School up north. So a lot of opportunities here to connect several different schools and parks for kids. I'll also note, we do know that an estimated 25% of Green Central's students walk daily to school, and more than 40% of the population is low income, and more than 50% of the population is people of color. So where we see these routes identified in our existing plans, currently 34th Street is identified in our Safe Routes to School map as a walking route, and so is 11th Avenue through the park. On the contrasting side, we have 10th is identified in our All Ages and Abilities Network as a future near-term low-stress bikeway, and so is East 34th Street. In terms of what we know about reported crashes and existing conditions, this is looking at 10-year data from 2011 to 2021, starting with East 34th Street, where there's been a total of 106 motor vehicle crashes, 1 pet crash, and 2 bicycle crashes. Both of those non-motorized resulted in crashes with injuries. And then looking at 10th, there is, for such a, I don't know if folks are familiar with the street, it's a fairly quiet neighborhood street. It does have a lot of crashes for such a neighborhood street. So we have 112 motor vehicle, 5 bicycle, and 13 pedestrian crashes. And then for 11th, which is a little different because it doesn't travel, it's not as extended segment as 10th, so not a fair comparison, but there has been 74 motor vehicle crashes, 3 bicycle, and 1 pedestrian. We will look more closely into this data, especially for 10th, just to understand if a lot of these crashes are happening at Lake Street and north of there, or if it's spread out along the corridor. In addition to this, we're also going to be looking at speed study, and then we just finished doing a parking study as well. Something that also an existing plan is just at the end of 2021, Green Central released their own Safe Routes to School plan, where the vision of the plan is that walking and biking to school is safe, comfortable, and fun for all students. The plan includes a variety of strategy around the 6 E's, so equity, engineering, education, encouragement, and evaluation. And this list here provides a lot of the activities that the school already does. In fact, when we were there doing a field walk observation of school dismissal time, we saw a bike train in motion of little kids. And really, they're at a point where they now need the infrastructure improvements in order to support all the encouragement and education that they've been doing. They also have identified 34th in their Safe Routes to School plan as an area of concern and improvements, and 10th Avenue as somewhere where they would like to see these bikeway connections made. And then the letters and the circles around Park Portland show, again, the difficulty of kids being able to cross at those streets. So that's something that we're certainly going to be looking at. In terms of next steps and schedule, so right now we are just kicking off this work now and doing a lot of the technical analysis to understand the existing conditions. We're also starting to engage with our agency partners, Hennepin County, which obviously owns and operates a lot of those high injury streets, the Park Board, who will be doing their own capital improvement project in Powderhorn Park, and then just working with Minneapolis Public Schools to engage with the students and families. We hope to kick off our engagement later this spring and summer before school ends, and hope to have a 30% design by end of this year, and then we'll kind of move into detailed project design next year, and the project will be constructed in the early part of 2024. So that's our contact information. We do have a project website where we'll be sharing all the details, and I am happy to take any questions you have for me today.
Barb, is your hand up? Looks like it's up. You're still on mute if it is, Barb.
I know, I took it down.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, not seeing any, I will thank you for the presentation, and we'll use the last 3 minutes to talk about the preceding presentation at BRT. So thank you for your attendance and double presentation and all that. So. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And then I'll look forward to next steps on that resolution and if there's anything else you need from me.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
We'll wrap this up in 5 minutes on schedule, but to be clear, what I'd like to do, if people are willing, is to just give a couple of bullet points, ideas on the overall main points on the BRT resolution, so it can start being written on. I think, just off the top of my head, I mean, where we support the project. I think we could say, you know, we wish it would be broader in scope as outlined by Barb and Julia, but that we do support it. But just what are people's first blush thoughts on that? It's just, again, just to get kind of a couple of bullet points, so 2 or 3 people can work on the motion. It shouldn't be terribly long, but just if we can get some bullet point ideas. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? All right. Well, that makes it simple. Now, who would like to take a laboring oar or two in drafting it? I am going to, unfortunately, take myself out of the running because I have a big legal brief due on Monday. That's sort of my focus right now. Can we get 2 or 3 names of people just to circulate a paragraph or 2 amongst themselves? Barb, would you like to be involved in that?
I will write it, but I will need some help for any of the things. I mean, basically all I can say is we support it, and some of the ideas that I've heard from Julia, but I would like her to reiterate those to me if she could. And I can work on it if she'd help.
Do you guys?
I'm not going to be available till Monday myself.
Okay.
So that's my only concern. Otherwise, I'm very willing to, but I can't promise that I'd be able to take a look at it. I'm going on a road trip.
Excellent. Well, you know, it sounds like a couple of our work lives and recreational lives will open up on Monday or Tuesday, and why don't we just shoot to address it then? Barb, if you could, if you want to put a couple things down and then circulate it to Julie and I early next week. Harmony?
I would be willing. I would love to help, but as a new PAC member, I'd like to work like with Barb and Julia or you guys, just to see how the formation, like how you formulate the statements and stuff. So, but I'd love to be in the loop with this around. And Lake Street I lived on Lake Street for 10 years, so kind of a heart project for me too. Excellent.
Well, terrific. Well, then I think we've got it worked out. Barb, if you want to just make kind of a rough draft or bullet points, and then circulate it to Julia, Harmony, and myself, and we'll all jump on that early next week, and it'll get wrapped up.
Just so you know, I will be gone starting Thursday. I will be out of town from next Thursday until the following Monday. So I will do that. I will do what I can do, and then I will send it to you. If you have responses right away, I can edit a little bit. If not, I'll be gone on Thursday and won't be doing any more editing after that.
Gotcha. Well, we'll work it in amongst everyone's schedules and obligations. So terrific. Is there any emergency announcements? Otherwise, we will wrap this thing up 35 seconds early. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing, some of you will see each other at Matthew's going away, but otherwise we'll see you all on Zoom somewhere down the road.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.